We have about 8 billion people on the planet, and we're going to have to figure out how to feed them. And currently 45% of the world's crops are turned into animal feed.
Oh my God.
So almost, like when
all these stats are just like gut punches.
But that's...
You're listening to Studio 22.
Welcome to Studio 22. I'm Will Meldman with my co-host Brock O'Hearn. We are here with Jennifer Stojkovic, author of The Future of Food is Female. We are so grateful to be with you today, and I cannot wait for this discussion.
We met through a friend, a female, Barbara, who's in the VC world as well. How do you know Ba?
So one of my best friends is one of her best friends. So Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ryan's like one of my very close friends. So he helped me get like the fund off the ground, and he's one of our advisors. And so I've known Ba for a little bit. And, she helped me early on when I was ideating around like what to do with the fund and like how to strategize. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. There's a lot more of us that need to be out there because most consumers are women.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, also that the LA Tech Week event that we were at too was basically, sounds like it's around the C fund, right? It's the whole space is, collaborating with celebrities, influencers, to raise funds, and create companies together. Really, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes, for food in particular, it's upwards of 90% of food is purchased by women. Like I have founders. I was with a founder this weekend and he was like
90%?
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was high, but like, damn.
Yeah. It's like on the upper end, 90%, lower end, like 75, 80, but substantial amount, depending on what type of purchase it is, whether it's food or overall purchasing. And this founder I was talking to this weekend was like, so I do a lot of, it's a company called Ancient Provisions, and they're doing like a healthy cracker that's made with banana flour. And he gives out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boxes every weekend. And he's like, when I have men come up, like dads, he's like, give me your address and I'll send you a box. Because when he talks to the men, they're like, I don't know what my wife buys. And he's like, you're not even worth my time. Because they know that they're not the decision makers in the house. Yeah. So it's better to get directly into the house to the mom, which is really hilarious, but he's not wrong.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Especially you're talking a family space and,
This sounds good. I want to try that cracker.
They're really good.
I feel like a plethora of companies that we're going to want to try.
I know companies doing some crazy ass shit. I mean, there's cultivated meat companies here in Los Angeles now.
Oh,
that's
wow.
Incredible. Yeah, I think you mentioned that last time. There's a couple, right?
There's a few, yeah.
It's actually a pretty good amount out here.
Yeah.
So you are the author of The Future of Food is Female. Tell us what the inspiration for this book was and why you made it.
So I personally have been interested in this space for about 8 years. So in my whole life outside of Silicon Valley and everything I did with my career, I cared about how I eat and what my impact on the world is. And I thought that there was not going to be any chance for me to ever bring that into what I do for a living. So I built my career in Silicon Valley. I worked for like 7 years under folks like Ron Conway. So for those who are not familiar, he's basically the godfather of Silicon Valley. If you look him up on Wikipedia, it's like literally what it says, the godfather of Silicon Valley. So, real deal VCs from back in the day. And so I was brought in to help grow the tech industry, mostly post 2008. And as I was building my career there, I had amazing opportunities. I worked on the ground with a lot of CEOs of very big companies now, things like Airbnb and Uber and stuff like that. But I realized pretty quickly it was a very male-dominated space. And it was also being in politics in addition to being in tech. It's like a dude space overlapping another dude space. So I'm pretty much the only woman most of the time. And so when the future of food started to actually gain momentum and it was in the news and real like normal everyday Americans started talking about it, I was like, wow, I can actually bring together what I did in Silicon Valley into this space that I've cared about personally for all this time. And it was very apparent to me that the same sort of issue was happening in the future of food. This new industry that was growing was largely growing from Silicon Valley money, which means that it was defaulting to the status quo. So every single major plant-based company and cultivated meat company is led by a man. And so I thought to myself, like, if I don't actually start putting work into changing the conversation, it's going to look just like where my first career was, and it's not going to be a very inclusive space. So The Future of Food is Female is the first book ever focused on women changing the food system. There's not a lot of media representation, so I decided to create it.
Yeah, you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, I have so many questions after that.
I got a lot. Let's hear it.
Literally, my brain was like, wait, that's 5 questions. You have to ask one. So one like total random thing I want to ask is like, you mentioned Silicon Valley and food and like how that overlaps, obviously. The news about like Bill Gates buying all this farmland. I mean, is there any context to that you could like help me figure out why that is happening?
So I can't believe how many times I got to answer questions about this guy.
I'm sorry, we don't even have to like
No, he's not consequential to, I mean, I do work with all of the top founders in the space. I work with all the VCs. Like, he is not related to the work that we do at all in alternative protein. He's done a couple of alternative protein investments, like a few things like Beyond and stuff like that. But as a whole, he's not really related to our space and our industry. From what I understand with the Gates Foundation, he's working to put a bunch of land into conservation trusts. Okay. Right. And that's the way that we have historically protected a lot of land in the United States, but people will think it's for nefarious purposes. And that's gained like a ton of momentum on the internet. Right. Like a lot of QAnon, a lot of like Republican folks think that he's buying up the land for some terrible reason. Right.
No, yeah. And that's not where my head went at all. I was just like, you have this guy with unlimited cash buying up farmland interested in the subject. So I was just curious, like, it's awesome to hear about it because I have no idea.
So just to touch on that really quick, so he's turning these into conservative, land, or is it to kind of match the national parks and stuff like that? Or
so, from my understanding, I've spoken to some folks at the Gates Foundation. Again, they're like we get lumped in. People say he's buying up land and he wants to make us all eat lab grown meat. And I'm like, that's my
control the food.
I'm like, that has nothing to do with him. Yep. We don't know him. My understanding is that they want to put it into a trust so that the land can't be developed. So it could be something like national parks or perhaps for actually regenerative, because that's a lot of the work that they actually do and a lot of the research that they do. Because currently the way that we're using our land, like the over-intensive industrialized agriculture we're putting on it, it's making the soil's days numbered, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think we have just unfortunately been the victim of a bit of like internet swirl when it comes to this.
Well, that's cool. We can like myth bust right now and be like, no, that's not what he's doing. Don't worry.
Yeah, he's not really alternative protein. All of us, like, we're over here trying to figure out solutions for how we're going to supply protein to America and the rest of the world because we know that we're going to have a protein shortage. That's our focus. We're not trying to do anything other than feed people food that makes them healthy.
In a sustainable way. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're saying feeding people food that's healthy too. You're saying some of this lab-grown meat or regenerative meat, you can take out carcinogens and other elements, but then add in stuff as well to make it even more healthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks that are not familiar, lab-grown meat, as it's kind of been called in the news for the last decade or so, that's that very first hamburger that about 10 years ago was $250,000 from Sergey Brin, the founder of Google. That's now down to like $8 a patty. So that's actually like a real product that's going to be served in America starting probably next year. So just to give context to people, this is not some crazy pie in the sky thing. This is real. It's already legally being sold in one country in the world, and the United States is expected to regulate and sell it next year here. So those products are going to give us the ability to recreate meat from the ground up. So we can, I was saying we can mess with like the LDLs and actually like there's a world where you could eat bacon that doesn't, cause a heart attack theoretically, because we don't have to have all those different components in it.
I want to live in that world.
Well, everybody does.
She's making the world, man.
That's the thing, right? When we have the ability to customize our proteins in a way that we can put all the health promoting benefits in it without all of the baggage, both like from a health perspective or from an environment and impact perspective, why would we not?
Even just like antibiotics for pigs or chickens, right? Like antibiotic free meat. I mean, that's like, I feel like where we kind of started, right? Is like, how do we make the meat as pure as possible? And now it's like, no, let's control it completely. It's really cool.
Yeah, and you eliminate any factors, I think, that whatever that animal is ingesting, the water, the food, the way they eat, the way they're treated, everything, you kind of get rid of all that and then make it the maximum benefit for us, for the human being, right?
Exactly. And, getting into like even the antibiotic conversation, do you want to take a guess what % of antibiotics are used for prophylactics in animals?
Oh, I'm guessing large, maybe 80.
No idea.
It's 80%.
Oh, I got it. That's shocking.
It's like crazy.
Wow.
And so, because what's happened is we just so intensively farm that there's just the conditions they're rife with causing like different infections and outbreaks.
Yeah.
So if we can move away from the need to do that and still produce the same amount of protein, still produce the same amount of meat, why wouldn't we? And you can go antibiotic free with cultivated meat, which is so cool.
Are there a lot of people who in this space, is it their mission to just make healthy food, or does it also have anything to do with the environment and the causes of that from farming?
All of the above.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? As we talk about transforming the food system, there are so many stakeholders that are involved. I mean, first and foremost, there's the planet. We have land, water, energy constraints that are happening. That's just kind of the high level. We estimate that, say, cultivated meat in particular would be 99% less land required, 99% less water required. You know, we're sitting here in California looking out on some pretty yellowing hills. So we're running out of water. Probably about 90% less energy required as well. Obviously, it's still theoretical, but think about that. Like, think about what that could do for the planet. So that's one piece of it. Then there's people that want to create healthier products, right? We have the ability with plant-based proteins, with some of these other technologies, it doesn't just have to be cultivated meat, to make products that are proven. A plant-based diet is proven to reverse like early diabetes, proven to like reverse like early heart disease as well.
Wow.
There's actual
Some of the
studies.
biggest factors of health issues in the US, in the world.
Absolutely. If you look at what most people are dying from, these preventable lifestyle diseases are responsible for a large amount of deaths every single year. So if we can create a healthier product that is accessible to people and that they want to eat it, think about what we could do for healthcare costs in particular. I do a lot with like the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. He's trying to get the costs for hospitals and prisons down for their healthcare because, you know, the city of New York has like Rikers and they have really, really, really big institutions. And he's like, we need to figure out how to cut costs. And so he's putting plant-based meals into these hospitals, hoping that they can start getting more preventative out there and reduce all of these emergency costs that they have.
I wonder how many factors go into people's mental health and issues, and especially in a space, you know, like a prison or something like that. If in getting rid of those factors and just adding a plant-based or healthy diet, if it will help someone's, you know, being, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. There's actually a friend of mine, Doms Thompson. He's about to write a book right now, a very famous like athlete and bodybuilder in the space. He has like an entire story about he was in prison when he like decided to adopt a plant-based diet, and he did it for like a mental cleansing. And then now that's like his whole world. That's what he does. That's, you know, he's an international public speaker on it about how he saved his soul like in prison and found something new.
Wow. Well, I've heard a lot of issues even with cancer too, and you really got to focus on anti-inflammatory foods. And a lot of people go vegan, a lot of people go plant-based, and it changes their entire life, and sometimes really gives them a fighting chance at beating, you know, or coming on the other side of cancer.
Yeah, I can't even tell you how many CEOs and founders I work with that they came to it from some sort of crazy cancer scare, whether it's themselves or, you know, my mom got cancer and we tried this diet and oh my gosh, like she's still here. And now I've created this like huge, like plant-based cheese company or something like that. There's a lot of stories that I get from the health perspective, and health is still the number one reason people do change to a more plant-based diet. It's not sustainability and it's not ethics, which is very interesting because you see a lot of people talk about environment or you see people talk about animal welfare, but it's not the number one reason still.
Well, what are we without health? You know, there is nothing there. You don't need money. You don't need anything because there's nothing to spend it on. There's nothing you can do with it. You know, if we don't have health, we have nothing.
Exactly. I mean, you can't enjoy anything in life.
Yeah.
Right. And you're not even here, you know, if they don't go well.
And I'm very, very interested in this topic. As I'm definitely a carnivore, like seeing a nutritionist, and, you know, I eat a certain amount of meat a day, but I try to be organic, try to be antibiotic free. I try to have the healthiest amount of meat that I can, right? Like, or quality of meat, with vegetables and fruit, whatever. But you like the baseline in this country, the majority of the meat consumed is not like high quality meat. It's like the frozen preservative McDonald's meat, right? I mean, do you have any stats on like what the baseline is, like what the majority of meat people are eating? Because you hear like Joe Rogan talk about that too. It's like there's a difference of like him killing an elk and eating an elk for 6 months in like nature and untouched by humans versus like lab processed meat.
Yeah. So first and foremost, about 99% of meat that is sold in the United States is from industrialized animal agriculture. And factory farm.
99?
Yes. It's only about 1%, right? So it depends on the meat. So if you're talking about chicken, it's basically all factory farm. If you're talking about beef, it's upwards of between like 88 to 90% of beef is factory farmed.
Yeah.
We are a country that eats factory farmed garbage. Like, let's be clear. That is what Americans consume. And the vast majority of people, if you ask, like, where do you get your meat? They think it's from that farm that they saw down the street. But that is not how we feed 330 million people.
Right.
How we feed 330 million people is with these industrialized operations. And so, interestingly enough, if you ask Americans, like, what do you eat? A lot of them will say, like, high quality, good beef or something like that. But that's not what that's not what the region.
If it's not like, if you go to like, obviously everything can't be like perfect.
Yeah.
But like if you go to like a top grocery chain and you go to the butcher and it says all those things, organic, whatever, blah, 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 what are the odds that it actually is? And is that still healthy?
So first off, there is many factors when it comes into like the cuts of meat that you are getting. There's a lot of kind of greenwashing. Can we swear on here?
Say whatever you want.
Okay. There's a lot of bullshit.
And
there's
you
a
can't
lot
say that,
of
though.
like, okay, bullshit's the one. All right, damn it. It was very fitting. We're talking about cows. Maybe I should say cow shit. There's a lot of things that don't have any legal meaning that they put on packaging. Yep. So you have to understand that most of what you're reading is like they're like humane, this, that. There's no standards for almost any of that. So they can say anything that they want. Depending on the price that you're paying, if you're paying like something that comes out of like a freezer or is in like the refrigerated section, the chance that that's not from like a concentrated animal operation is pretty low. If you're going to some butcher, that's in a small town, or you know about some farm that's like 20 miles outside of the city here, yeah, maybe you're getting actual real free range beef. But the reality is that we can't feed 330 million people that way, because if we were to actually move towards having grass-fed and free range beef, we would produce drastically less protein.
Right.
So, they estimate it's about 90% of meat consumption needs to be reduced for it to become sustainable. So that's going to leave a massive gap in terms of how we feed people. The number one sold meat, and you asked this, what is the number one thing that people are eating? The number one sold meat in America is Tyson nuggets. If you look at the top 5, yes.
Like kids' chicken nuggets kind of?
Yeah, Tyson nuggets.
Wow.
That's the number one selling meat in America. If you look at the top 5, 3 of the 5 are like Oscar Mayer Wiener hot dogs, Johnsonville brats, Tyson nuggets.
That's like the ground leftovers that they...
That's what people eat. And that's what's so important for people like us that are here in Los Angeles having conversations about, like, we have an Erewhon and like a Whole Foods, and they'll tell you like the birth date and the horoscope sign of the cow you're eating, right? That's not how we feed the masses. That's not how most people live. And so when we talk about how do we scale how we feed people, we need to drastically reinvent what it means to produce protein in this country, because we can't sustain the way that we're doing it. And the stuff that people want to eat, it's not good for them. It's not good for them at all.
Yeah, it's definitely like you're saying about on the packaging too. You could say natural, it can say organic, and that does not mean that's what it is whatsoever. But then you dive into the ingredients in the back of something. And I remember learning this was well over a decade ago, but it can say something in there, but if it's less than 1%, they can actually take out the ingredient in there. They can it doesn't add up to what's actually in the packaging. So a lot of times you don't even know what you're getting. And that's someone who, I've been into working out for years now. And so I had to go into these supplement lines. I really want to know what I was getting in my body. And they will put things in you and cover it, like you say, oh, you're getting 80% protein, but it's concentrate and it's got all these other fillers and all this other stuff in it. And so you're like really only getting maybe 10% of protein. And so it's this backwards, messed up way of not only doing business, but it's people are consuming things they don't know they're putting in their body. And that's where we have all these health effects too, where it's like, well, I didn't know that it had this one thing I'm allergic to because it didn't say in the packaging that it was in there, and it's affecting my health for years to come. It's just mind blowing. And then same thing with the farms too, when you really dive into how inhumane and how crazy they are. Like even when I was really working on cutting, these are all things I learned from working out, right? fish digest a lot faster in your body. And tilapia was considered one of the best ones at the time. And I remember doing some research on it and looking at these tilapia farms, how they're literally just eating their own feces and going back. And that's what they're doing in these little farmed tilapia farms. And it's disgusting. It's as gross as it can get, and it's not healthy, and it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. So the fact that the space, one, that you see the space and you're helping become not only an advocate, but telling people stories with your book that are all trying to make a massive change, is like, we need you. We need more people like you, and we all need to move in this direction, because like you said, it's not sustainable. What are we going to do 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Like, we're not going to have any of it.
You know, like, I think 10 is liberal, to be completely honest. I think that 5, honestly, right? Because you have to think, we're currently in geopolitical turmoil. We have a war in Europe right now. That war is not going to let up. And the disruption that we're going to see to the supply chain as a result of that, we've barely even seen it. So there's been a 20% increase in food inflation in the US right now. It's going to get so much worse, because all that animal feed is skyrocketing in price. And so the Tyson CEO said a week and a half ago, they missed their earnings projections. You know, Tyson's the biggest meat company in the country. They missed their earnings projections, and they said, we aren't going to have enough of a herd next year. There's going to be a meat shortage. They're already publicly saying it. And it's simply because there's not enough grain to feed these cows, right? Because that's what is the kicker when it comes to the way that we produce protein, is we have to think about the entire footprint of the food that has to feed the food.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that nobody understands of the conversation. You know, when there's a war in Ukraine that produces a substantial amount of grain and sunflowers and things that are needed to become crops that we feed, like
oil, gas, everything.
It's mind blowing. And then you compare that to the fact that Canada had, 30% of the pea protein was lost to a drought last year. So if you combine both these shortages with the climate shortages that we're now facing, we're not going to have enough feed. So we've got 2 options. We turn the feed into human food, or we, take that feed and we produce less meat out of it, right? It's just like from a mathematical perspective, it's fucking dumb that we are putting all of that very small amount of crops into feeding something else that we get even less calories out of, when we could be producing it for humans.
Right.
That's interesting. So some of these meats too, like, how is the absorption rate in the body, the human body? Is it better than actual meat? Do you know?
So in terms of cultivated meat or plant-based?
Both, I guess.
So there's a certain amount that your body can consume of protein that you can get in one shot, right? It's like 25 grams, right?
Yeah, I think it depends on what I've known is it depends on the time when you do it. Like after workout, you can actually ingest a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it's probably around 25.
So I think you're partly like an expert in this space, but one of the things that you have to have with plant protein is you absorb a little bit less, so you have to have more plant protein. That is a reality of plant protein, just the way that your body absorbs it. But you can get as much high quality. You just do need to, it's the same as like if you look at the protein that's in a vegan powder versus like a whey powder, you'll see that you actually have to consume a bit more, right? From a cultivated meat perspective, they have not brought it to the public yet. But as of right now, it is fully like it's meat. So the way that your body reacts with meat currently is how these products will react in your body, because right now they're producing identical to what you're used to. But what's going to be really cool is in a few years from now, once people start eating cultivated meat and they get used to like, oh, here's like the hamburger I'm used to. I've been eating it this way. And they're like, hey, you want to try like hamburger 2.0? Hey, do you want to try burger 2.0? Hey, do you want to try just like a disc of a protein that never even existed that we engineered that's actually a super protein that's way better for you than any living mammal? Because that's where we can go with it. We actually theoretically can create meat out of animals that aren't even like in existence.
Yeah. That was when we first had the conversation the other week. That was where my mind immediately went to, was the Jetsons, the little pill that you can have one pill and if you have all the nutrients you're ever going to need for the day. It's fascinating because we are, I think so many of us, we were talking about that earlier about, we have a vitamin D deficiency, vitamin C deficiencies, so many things that just through our daily process and maybe not having the right supplementation as well as, our genetic makeup that some of us are able to ingest and digest certain proteins and vitamins and minerals better than others. There's the missing link that we can put in, like you're saying, to give us everything we need. So what does that mean? We'll have healthier bodies. We'll have more energy. We'll have better sleep. We'll, have better life experience, I think. We'll probably live longer,
Yeah, I mean, when I'm eating healthy, I'm a different human. I mean, diet and nutrition is so important. Are there any, there's like a little devil advocate question. Yeah. Are there any like drawbacks to eating meat that isn't like real flesh, when it comes to cultivated meat?
There's one very, very massive drawback to it, and it's that we do not have the production means to scale it to any meaningful amount right now.
So no like physical, biological.
There's no, So in terms of like health to the human, no. It's been sold in Singapore for about 2 years now. It's completely safe for human consumption. It's going through rigorous FDA assessments right now. It has been for several years in the United States. So from a safety perspective, no problem. Wow. From a industry perspective, we are nowhere near where we need to be to have the technology to scale it right now.
But that'll come in time, right?
Yes, but we need to very significantly invest in building that infrastructure. Our entire world is built around the infrastructure of industrialized animal agriculture. Yeah. We will need to re-envision what like American farmland looks like in many ways, right?
I hope so.
Well, it really dovetails very nicely into like the regenerative movement, because that land needs to be reclaimed and regenerated. And I work with a lot of people at places like Cargill and Tyson, like the biggest meat companies in the world. And I talk to their executives, and they all agree, and we all agree we need to regenerate the land. But the way that regenerative ag works is not going to produce like meat in any meaningful way. That's not really what it's meant to do. Like, it's meant to have ruminants that are helping to capture carbon and things like that. So we can't rely on that to become the new way that we eat meat, because it doesn't make any sense. We need to figure out a new way to produce meat and also use regenerative ag. So I have a lot of regenerative ag folks I talk to, and they go, we need more cows. I don't, support what you're doing. And I'm like, I agree. Let's use the cows for what you're doing. But also that's going to have like a 90% whole of protein where you need to support what I'm doing. Like, we actually are working on the same thing.
When you say regenerate the land, what does that mean? What is that process?
So this is where I am not an expert on regenerative agriculture. I know, there's various different ways that people want to do it, but essentially bringing cows back onto the land or other ruminants that can help to basically regenerate the soil. So we used to have bison that roamed all of the country. Yeah. We killed them all, largely to drown out the native population. We killed most of their bison because it was their food source. And so the land actually naturally does need something like a cow or a bison or something like that to work the land. And they actually show that when there is land that's growing like grass and things like that, it brings more rain.
Really?
Wow. It's wild. I've been doing so. This is like new for me, because I did not dive too much into regen until the last few weeks in particular, because I met some advocates for it. I'm trying to find some common ground to understand them. But you actually can bring like more water.
Does it release moisture out of the earth and it goes up into the atmosphere or something? Or
I don't know the reason, but I know that in China, they've successfully done this, where they've taken completely barren soil that they've regenerated and turned into like thriving, like water producing land. It's insane. Wow.
So I'm gonna look into that for sure.
Yeah.
That's the theory. So the theory is that if we can take all of this land that has been destroyed from, monocropping and industrialized agriculture, and we can regenerate it, we can regenerate the soil, get it producing again. That does require, most people believe that we need to have cows to do it, because they are part of it. The ruminants, they help regenerate it. But
the grazing and the fertilizer and the
exactly. So they're a part, and even them like stepping
releasing,
and crushing. That actually is a part of it, just like the bison were.
Well, it's like turning the soil essentially, right? And
exactly.
And then you have their, for lack of a better term, feces, that's going to be fertilizing the soil. Their water, or their pee, is going to be essentially a form of water too. That can be fertilized through the water and go up back into however. It's starting to, make a little more sense. I have no idea.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, it's very new to me, because like my space has always been like, I focus very specifically on alternative protein. That's what I'm an expert in. But trying to understand how you can marry these two very large growing food movements together. If we do that, and I believe that we really should, we need to figure out how we're going to produce all that meat that we're not going to really make off of regenerating the land. And they say some of our land is so degraded. We have like on the low end 30 harvests left.
Wow.
Have you ever heard that?
Wow. So
I haven't heard the 30
years left
harvest.
of harvesting.
That's on the low end. Some people say 50, but either way, that's a terrifying number.
I've looked a bit into the Roundup situation, the pesticides and everything too, and how that's affecting our dirt and our soil, and then also what's going into our water, what's going into our food, going to our animals, going to the plants as well, and how it can be largely cancer causing and stuff like that. So
it's been proven. It's actually
Yeah.
they won the lawsuit. They did prove it, and that's the other thing that's so crazy is that the vast majority of communities that live around where these terrible industrial agriculture practices, whether it's animal or not, it's usually like poor communities. It's usually Black communities or brown communities. So you don't hear about it. And that Roundup lawsuit was a really big deal that they actually won that.
the problem with the Roundup too, that what I was reading on was that even if we stopped using it, it would take
It's like still there.
50 years
Yeah.
to naturally get out of our ecosystem. And that's including even being evaporated up into the sky, into the clouds, and it'll get rained on even our organic farming.
Well,
So it's
every human has like Teflon in their system now too.
Yeah, exactly.
Same type of thing.
It's just the ramifications of that, to where it's like, okay, well, now there's hope, at least it sounds like, with this regenerative food and all the other alternatives that are coming out of like, look, we can control this from the ground up. We know where it's coming from. We know what's going on in our body. We can make it even more beneficial to our body. Well, it's interesting, I think, because you mentioned when we first met about the recession, 2008, 2009, and all that technology that was coming out of that, like the Ubers and all that stuff. And now we're in this other space, and this is the next kind of wave of what's coming, and this is what we
100%.
need, and this is going to be more determined on our survival instead of like tech things that might make our lives a little bit better, right? But I'm curious with what's going on, like you said, with Tyson having to drop off, not going to be able to meet their numbers and stuff, if that's going to officially open the doors of like, if we don't do something immediately, we're going to be in major trouble.
Every time there's some crazy, a lot of us thought the pandemic would do it. A lot of us, when, they proved that when COVID and, you can talk about like what caused COVID, we know that the vast majority of pandemics are caused from like animals, right? H1N1 and
SARS.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's like SARS, there's MERS, there's swine flu, there's avian flu, all of those, right? We know that they all have animal origin, and most of them are from intensive farming. The swine flu came from North Carolina pork farmers.
I got swine flu. It's not fun.
I got swine flu too.
Not fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had it too in 2009.
Me too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn.
My senior year. Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
crap.
I just started college. I was in Toronto.
Yeah. It was miserable.
Yeah. I
It
was
was
I
miserable.
felt like a Mack truck ran me over.
Yep.
Oh, God.
It was
It
much
was-
worse than getting COVID, to be
Oh,
honest.
yeah.
It was
Oh,
much
yeah.
worse.
I can't. we're not going to talk about that.
no,
but
I feel you. I had it
there's
too.
there's a black trash bag and it wasn't empty. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. It was.
Yeah. Dude, I
It was
know.
coming out all ins everywhere.
God.
It was the worst.
Swine flu.
Sorry.
But here's the thing though, right? Those are just like a few of the tiny pandemics that we were able to stop. And then we saw what COVID did. COVID is not nearly as bad as if like avian flu or something like that
Influenza in 1906 or whatever.
happened. Which was,
Spanish
basically,
flu,
the Spanish flu, like in 1918 basically was avian flu. We now know it had an avian flu origin, right? So there's a lot that's at stake. We thought that was going to be the thing. A lot of us were like, everyone's going to see the tie between the food system and pandemics. They see that the entire world has stopped because of this, so we're good. No, that didn't change it, right? Then you hear about, the fires, right? We had the fires in Sydney. Everyone forgot about that. Australia was like half on fire. And then we had a pandemic and I was like, oh yeah, Australia. And we're like, yeah, we've got the fires are here. Colorado now has like potentially even worse fires than here. We got fires all across Canada where I'm from now. And I was like, okay, maybe like climate change. Like, no, apparently not. And so I think, at the end of the day, it's going to be like how bad the wallet hits for people to start really thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the problem, is that we don't have subsidies in the plant-based space largely. We kind of have to foot the cost ourselves, whereas animal ag has heavy, heavy subsidies. And so we've struggled to have our products meet their price. Price parity has been the problem. It's been like the Impossible Burger. Everyone loves it. Most people will buy an Impossible Burger over a beef burger, or at least half the time. They love it. They're great, but they're more expensive.
Right.
Yeah, but that's like having the $250,000 burger. Then once we have the resources up, get
Then
down
it's
to
under
$8.
$10. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking about like the baseline meat, because like you said, that's what over 90% of people are eating. So it's like once we can get this to that point, I mean, that will be the dream, right? That'll be like the ideal scenario.
But it's also to the health ramifications of eating that meat. That it's, I forgot the doc long times ago, the McDonald's one or something like that.
Oh, the supersized me?
Supersized me. That's it.
Right.
Exactly.
Morgan Spurlock's talk.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, you can eat this unhealthy food and save all this money, but then look at your medicine cabinet, look at the ramifications of that and your health issues where you pay more essentially in that space. So, but it's getting to that point of, we're very like pain versus pleasure. We take the temporary pleasures that causes long-term pain, which is eating the crappy food. And then now we've got massive health ramifications because of it, versus like temporary pain of, I'm going to do the extra work, or I'm going to pay a couple extra bucks, which sucks.
Think about like if you have to make a decision between, gassing your car to get to work or spending it on, healthy food for your family. I mean, obviously you want to do both, but like if something's available and cheaper, it's very easy to make that decision and save that money.
Absolutely. And sometimes survival, that's all people can afford too. It's easier to fill, if you can feed your whole family for $12 and, you guys are going to make it to the next day, that's a different conversation,
Right.
And that's where most people are living in this country, right?
Yeah.
It's about half of Americans can't skip a paycheck.
Been there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a very blue collar small town. We didn't have any money growing up. I had 10th grade. My parents have a 10th grade education, and that's
smart in my family. No, I'm just kidding.
Seriously, I mean, you've playing around with these LA people. And it's like everybody's parents are doctors and lawyers. And I'm like, okay, so my mom was a cashier. My dad's blind. But when you realize when you grow up in these smaller towns and you grow up in places that are not really nice places, like we're all fortunate to live now, outside the coastal elites, as they call them.
Right.
Like you look at how people are actually living their lives. Like
the real world.
And that's one of the problems, and I talk about this in the book. One of the problems is that a lot of these future of food companies, in tech in general, it's based in the Bay Area, maybe a little in LA, a little in New York, Seattle, like maybe Miami's making a play here and there. It's missing like 95% of America. And that's a big part of the political divide and the cultural divide, is that they feel like they are completely lost from the conversation, And I tell people all the time in the future of food, I talk to so many CEOs, and a lot of them are like, we've never actually visited our plants where like our products are made. And I'm like, you never go to Arkansas, man. Like,
right.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, do you go on road trips? Like, do you ever, because I road trip all the time. I've driven across America. I've driven across America probably 10 times. I did it just recently in the pandemic, and I stopped in like these like tiny one stoplight towns to like see what's going on. I was down like Route 66, and and it gives you a greater appreciation for the country, which is so awesome. Just go to a national park and you're like, oh yeah, America, fuck yeah, like it's the best.
We have the most beautiful national parks, I think, from Yosemite to Glacier. I mean, it's insane.
I know.
I totally agree with you. We're obviously
Are you guys
big
gonna go
nature,
to, like,
camping, all that.
Like, that truck out front's mine. That's why I built it.
Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go to every national park. So I immigrated 10 years ago. And so I think I'm like the most American you can find because I like took a citizenship test. So I'm like all in it. But I want to go to like every national park. I'm trying to go to every state. I've been to like 35, I think, so far. And I've been to maybe like 25 national parks.
Have you done Yellowstone or Glacier in Montana?
I've done Yellowstone. I've done Yellowstone and Grand Teton in Jackson, Wyoming on the way. I have not done Glacier. But here's a fun one for you, since we randomly are talking about national parks. Okay, what are your favorite national parks? And I'll tell you mine.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yellowstone and Glacier.
I mean, Yellowstone.
Or sorry, Yosemite.
Yeah, I mean,
Yosemite and Glacier.
Yosemite and Glacier. Very controversial opinion.
I think, probably Yosemite. I love sequoias, honestly.
Sequoias are dope.
Yeah.
Did you climb Mount Whitney yet?
I haven't done Whitney. I was just up there though, but that is a beast of a hike. That's a big one.
I did it in one shot. Started at 12:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And you get off the mountain at about 3:30.
The Nagorogango crater in Kenya.
I was there last. So that's
I love that.
The Ngoro, that's in Tanzania, not Kenya.
Both, right?
Okay. I was literally there and telling you about that right before we started the pod.
Maybe I think we might have landed in Kenya and driven to Tanzania.
I was in it. like a year ago. I was there. I did all of the Serengeti. I road tripped all of Tanzania. I went to Zanzibar. I went and like stayed in Zanzibar and like dove with all the octopus and stuff last year.
So cool.
It was after we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro last year.
Yep.
Incredible.
We raised $25,000 for charity actually when we did that.
Oh, that's awesome.
But to my point, I was going to tell you my favorite national park. My favorite national park is Dry Tortugas.
Where's
It's
that?
the like least known national park. Okay. The Dry Tortugas is 70 miles away from Cuba, and it is an island national park. You have to leave from Key West and you have to take a boat like 2.5 hours to get there. And then when you get there, it is this tropical island in the middle of nowhere. There's no power or anything. And it's an old fort, like an old military fort from the Spanish from like 500 years ago. And so it's like a big,
Tortuga, like pirates.
turtle. Who's that? Tortugas.
Did you say Tortuga? Or,
Yeah.
She said Tortuga, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Location.
Is that pirate?
Yeah, like 'cause
Pirates of
it's
the Caribbean.
in the Caribbean, right? So it's like you think Tortuga, Caribbean.
Oh, the
Like
name, because I think
Spanish.
Tortuga means turtle, doesn't it?
Oh no, that could be its meaning
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
Tortuga. That's
Sorry,
so funny.
I'm totally off topic.
No,
I didn't mean to
Yeah, so it's
interrupt
probably
you.
it's in the Caribbean. No, you're probably correct.
I love that I got exactly what both of you were saying.
Yeah.
So you're like, turtle, right? And I'm
Thank
like,
God Brock's here. Yeah. But what's so cool? So you can go. It's a fort. It's a military fort, and they only have like 4 camping permits a night. So it's like you and like just like a few other people are allowed to stay there, and it's like your own private tropical island. You wake up and it's like your own island. There's only a ranger that stays on there with you. The stars are the best you'll ever see in the world. And there's like manatees. There's a crocodile that lives there. You can just snorkel like all day long and nobody knows it exists.
That sounds incredible.
until
You've
now.
got Dry Tortugas. Dry Tortugas National Park. It's very limited. You got to get your permits early. And it's like an American oasis.
You definitely have to get them early because that's something that I think happened especially over the pandemic. I've worked,
People love it.
yeah, it's the industry, even just overlanding, like that's what my truck is built for, is just, driving overland. It has exploded.
I bet.
It absolutely exploded. And I remember looking into, because before I loved camping and I've always tried to do as many trips as I possibly can. And should try and get a permit to go to some of these places now is like, if you're lucky, 8 months out, a year out. And it's just like,
we looked into Yosemite and it was 2 years out
yeah.
for anything.
Yeah.
I had to, I remember I got up really early when we were in Colorado last year and like had to like apply to get permits to drive on the Rocky Mountain National Highway. Like you have to apply to get a permit to literally drive on it.
Oh yeah. It's the worst when you don't, like if you're not able to get that information and you miss one and it's like, oh yeah, no, you need this permit to do this thing. And like, I was like, I need a fire permit to build a fire. Like I need to do all these different things. And I'm like, and you forget one and you're sitting there like, I just screwed myself. And now I can't go to this trip or something happens. But
Just like bureaucracy. That's like, it's just like, you think you're going to have a good time and just bureaucracy is like, bam.
Yeah. Yeah, no. But that's one of the things I love about overlanding in general is, you can go to the BLM land and go anywhere and
Just
do
make
anything.
your park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
National Forest too.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to the right, I think certain sections of each one, depending on where there are, but even some of them within, like I just went to Sequoias with my sister not too long ago, and we found this like off the beaten path kind of hidden thing. We found a really beautiful creek in the middle of nowhere, just trees and nothing else around us. But I had to drive thinking it was going to be like a 4 or 5 hour drive to get there. And it turned into like 7 because I had to go on the opposite side of the entire forest. But it's worth it. It's so beautiful out there. It's the ultimate place to reconnect and check out. And hiking's a whole nother beast. I had a bum knee for like 2 years and it's finally getting good. And now I'm like taking full advantage of being able to use my knee. It was something I took for granted. Absolutely. Now I'm thinking, I've been conditioning myself, getting better cardio and everything, but I want to do these hikes.
You got to do Kilimanjaro.
Or mountain biking as well. It's becoming very enticing to me.
Do Kilimanjaro, man.
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro is so... Have you done it? Did you do it when you were in...
Someone in our group did it right before they met up with us, and they were like talking about it the whole time and showed us photos and all that. I mean, it looks incredible.
How high is that?
It's like
20,000 feet.
About 20,000.
Yeah.
Like close to it. So it's...
Should that be the first one I do?
I mean, that's the one that's considered for like everyday people can do it.
Okay.
It's crampons and mountaineering if you go to anything higher than Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is the highest of the top peaks that is accessible to like non-technical climbers.
Wow.
So, I mean, the last part of it is like straight up like snow and everything. Like you definitely have snow.
That's awesome.
But what's crazy is that when you get to the fourth night of Kilimanjaro, you're down to like 50% oxygen when you do that final hike up. which is so crazy because you're like move like a foot and then you're like, okay, in like another 30 seconds, I'm ready for the next foot, you know? And it's like the strongest people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're just like, the lack of oxygen just really messes with you up there. And that's what kills people. Like, well, literally it kills people. There's a lot of people that get, oxygen.
You have like a stroke or like a...
Yeah. We watched the last night. So basically like you hike, you get to the camp at like 6 p.m. They're like, okay, grab some food. You grab some food and they're like, no, go to bed because we wake up at 11 and we're starting to hike at 12. And you're like, oh, great. So you do that. And then you start the hike at 12 and that's the like ascent day. And you ascend at about 6:30 in the morning is when you get to the peak. And the saddest part is you just like watch all these people that can't make ascent day and they're like down the mountain. Like, getting to the last day.
Wow.
That's why I recommend if anyone is interested, you do Diamox, do the altitude sickness medicine.
Oh yeah. My first experience ever in a mountain is I've always lived on like sea level my entire life until I was about 10 or 12. We were here in LA and we did a school trip to Yosemite and ended up hiking Half Dome. And I got up there and I was sick as a dog. Like I was, and they couldn't figure it out. And they're like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel good. I'm puking everywhere. All my friends in 8th grade are making fun of me, like it was the whole thing. But I learned about altitude sickness and it was, my body had never been that high. And it's not even that high. Really, realistic. I think maybe it was like, however many, 8,000. I got sick at like 7,000 feet or something.
It's about the how fast you ascend.
Exactly.
It's not about the height. It's about how much is gained in such a short period. I got altitude sickness at the end of Whitney, and Whitney's about 15,000 feet. It's the tallest mountain in the continental U.S.
And it's a big hike.
Yeah, I mean, Whitney, we left 12:30 in the morning, and we got there at about 12 p.m. or so is when you get to the top. Most people do it in 2 days, but I like ridiculously decided to do it in one because I thought it would be better to do it all in one shot versus like to get a really crappy night's sleep on the rock before.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
You know?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
You want to be like well rested.
Get it done. And then you're right there midday, enjoy the view completely. And
yeah, you have to get off of it by like 1 p.m. because they get lightning strikes.
Really?
Yeah, it's at very high risk of lightning. So they have a pretty strict rule that if they see you're not past a certain amount by a certain time in the morning, it's like you get off the mountain, like you're not going to make it.
That's wild.
You should definitely do Whitney. We're nearby. It's only a few hours away.
Yeah.
And there's also it's like one of the only remaining internment camps in America. Matanzas is right near there too.
Wow.
Yeah, it's where they, the majority of Japanese Americans in World War II were rounded up and put into the internment camp.
Oof.
It's the only like one that you can actually visit still in America to go see the history because it's largely forgotten from American history.
Wow, I'd love to go see that. I mean, it's wild.
It's a national monument.
Yeah.
In Rwanda, we went to the Genocide Museum, and that was like crazy spiritual experience, like seeing all that and all the graves that are there. But like they also have, exhibits for other genocides, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about genocide awareness. They have Armenia, they have like all these different ones to illustrate. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny you're talking about climbing peaks because I just watched 7 Years in Tibet. and I was like, this is so wild. Obviously that story is just crazy in itself. But it made me, he was so in love with hiking. And, it was maybe the one place he could really lose himself, even though he was kind of Brad Pitt's character was a dick and all about himself all the time. But that's what ended up saving them too, as far as getting out of, prison and everything. But it made me want to go hike. I'm like, this is like, I wanted to go climb some peaks. I wanted to get out and just experience life, it ended up being the thing that kind of saved him too. But,
it's important.
Yeah.
It's really, I tell people all the time, like the two best things America's ever done. Like the federal government, they piss me off all the time, but like they've done two really good things. They made the national park system and the interstate system. That helps me get to the national parks.
Yeah,
We it's like harking back to the era when like government worked well, like we did a couple things right. That was nice.
Oh,
absolutely. Sure. And I love
I like the whole freedom thing,
Yeah. It's kind of
that's protecting land, right?
Yeah.
That's what's so cool about it.
Or being able to own your own land, right?
Yeah.
Was it John Muir too? Like
Muir Woods.
Muir Woods.
Love it up there.
Up in SF.
Yeah. Spent some time up there.
that's where when they ratified the United Nations, so they like officially signed it in the Fairmont in SF, and then they went to Muir Woods to like recognize it. So there's actually a plaque you can go see of like where the very first United Nations was.
Yeah, I stayed at the Fairmont and then I went over there. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. I spoke in the president's room at the Fairmont a few years back.
Incredible.
Where
beautiful.
Where they like straight up like ratified it. I was like, damn, they're like, let me speak here. That's cool.
Yeah, I stay there when I go to Warriors games all the time.
Yeah, the Fairmont's pretty cool.
I grew up like a couple blocks away from it, so it like reminds me of home when I go back.
Like Nob Hill or?
Pacific Heights.
Oh, Pac Heights. Nice.
Yeah, like right on Clay and Lion, like right up.
So, I lived on Russian Hill for a very, very long time. I was in SF for six and a bit years.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah.
NorCal, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, SF is the land of dreams. I always say if you can make it in SF, you can like make it anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard, but it's going through a little bit of a thing now. It's not looking so great there.
Yeah, I got to figure some things out.
I feel like a lot of places are going through a little thing right now. So
SF in particular, though, their numbers are worse than every other major city.
Wow.
Although I was back home at my, I'm from Toronto. I was back home in Toronto a few weeks ago, and Toronto was actually looking pretty bad too. So hopefully. Wow. I mean, the shutdown, there's like every third business, I think, was out of business when I went downtown in Toronto the other week.
They're
100%.
Really strict up there, right?
They had the second longest lockdown in the world behind China. So it was 7 months straight. It was really terrible. Like when I saw my family for the first time after the lockdown, like they had a lot of like mental illnesses, like a lot of weight gain. They were on a lot more meds. And I had to like do a medical intervention with my mom to get her off of all this crap that her doctors had been putting her on. Oh, it was very heartbreaking, actually. She was, she has chronic pain. And because you couldn't see your doctor for like 2 years in Canada, every time she would be like, oh, I have an issue, they'd be like, oh, here's another prescription.
Right.
She shows up to see me in LA last summer and she had 12 prescriptions.
Oh my gosh.
And I like saw, I'm like, what the hell is this? She's like, oh, this is what I take. And I'm like, she was taking 4 doses of Ativan to go to bed.
That's not good.
Yeah. And it was all just like, she hadn't seen the doctor and there'd been no treatment. There'd been nothing preventative. And so like, and that's, I mean, those are the hidden costs that people don't realize. Like all these people that didn't get proper health care, in addition to the new ones that created problems. It's scary.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I know. Really like light topic there, guys.
No,
we're like national parks. We went to like pandemic.
Well, to bring it back to the food and national parks and hiking and everything too. Healing, yeah. How's the food looking for, you know, how long's the shelf life on some of this food? Like if we want to go on a long hike somewhere for a week or two, would it last?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of like, there's dried and like rehydrate, like lots of plant-based proteins that are really great for hiking. I mean, some of those products have been around for decades and hikers have been using them for a very long time. I know a lot of people that hike with like Beyond Burgers and things like that. It does have, you know, you're supposed to keep them cool just the same as like regular meat, but it is nice to know that you're not going to get like salmonella.
Yeah. Hike a cold mountain, you'll be good to go.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they're not going to get like too warm. But definitely there's a lot you can rehydrate.
Tell us a little more about what's in this book and the people that you've interviewed, because I know you have a lot of very successful people.
Yeah. So, you know, I focused on 15 different women around the world, 6 different continents. And really the goal was to show a few things. First off, show the diversity of women in the space. So we've got about 80% women of color that are featured in the book. But what's really interesting to me is that they're all doing something different. Some of them are celebrities using their platforms. Some of them are venture capitalists that are doing some of the earliest investing. The reasons you have some of these products are because of women like this. I have a member of the European Parliament that's like literally changing the way the laws work in the EU.
Wow.
And then lots of women that are scientists and CEOs that are building plant-based companies or other future of food technologies. So like cultivated meats is one of them, but there's also things like precision fermentation, which is another way to make animal protein without the animal. Some women are making like human milk. Like for instance, there's 2 different chapters about women that are making human milk that we can consume instead of cow milk.
Well, that would be amazing for the formula shortage, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of different applications for human milk. One of them is a breast milk alternative, obviously. For folks that are interested in the environmental aspect, about 10% of the global liquid dairy market goes to infant formula. So from an environmental standpoint, it's actually a tremendous impact on the planet because dairy is extremely, carbon emitting and methane emitting and nitrous oxide emitting, right? But there's also really interesting new technology. There's a chapter on there, a company called Turtle Tree, where they are taking what would otherwise be a cow-based, like say lactoferrin or something like that, and making a human version.
Oh.
So there's over 2,000 ingredients in milk.
Tortuga tree.
There you go. So you would know this well, right? You know some of the different very important health promoting aspects of milk. It also comes with a lot of baggage because it's for a cow.
Yeah, but also the form of milk you're eating too, right? Because 2% or whatever is going to be packed filled with sugar.
Exactly.
Depending on, and there are different elements in cow's milk as well that doesn't really jive well with the human body.
Exactly. So. It's but the thing about milk, that the reason why so many people from the bodybuilding space try to get black market breast milk is because there are things that are in milk that are really good and growth promoting, but then there's a bunch of crap that's not, right? And so they're actually isolating the key pieces of the 2,000 plus ingredients in milk and putting human grade into products. And if that happens, we have no idea, the long-term implications of consuming human milk it's incredible. There's early studies. Well, there's early studies that are showing, it helps with IBS, human milk, breast milk.
Because it's a better substitute for lactose. Because I know milk, a lot of people now have a lactose allergy. My older brother has one and developed one over time just by drinking milk. But would that be an example of one of the chemicals that it's just more natural for humans to consume versus the lactose in cow milk?
So the reason that he is lactose intolerant is because that naturally you produce a lactase enzyme, right? And your lactase enzyme is the enzyme you're born with when you're a baby, and it breaks down your mama's milk. You are supposed to actually stop producing that. And historically speaking, white Europeans are the ones that consume milk. They're the ones that brought it over to North America. So they have this it's almost like a mutation that allows you to keep producing the lactase enzyme into adulthood. So that is the abnormal people. Normal people no longer produce the enzyme. That's why most Black Americans, Asian Americans, places where they didn't historically keep consuming milk, they don't have that enzyme. So your brother's no longer producing the enzyme, and that's actually normal. Us that can keep drinking milk, we are the abnormal ones. It's very fascinating. It is specifically so you can consume your mother's milk.
That's really interesting. I mean, I've switched over to oat and almond milk basically completely, and now when I try to avoid milk, it doesn't hurt me if I drink it, but I just don't like it anymore because I've switched.
Yeah, oat milk's delicious.
Yeah. So would that be, okay, so that's natural. I did a good thing there, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the white European genes, the Nordics and things like that, where they kept consuming milk, and then that's why white people are more likely to not be lactose intolerant.
I have friends who have taken digestive enzymes. I think I've taken them as well at a certain point to help break down food within my stomach and have it transfer
probiotics.
Better. Yeah, stuff like that. There are is there an enzyme that somebody could take for milk that is actually digestible from people?
It's called lactate.
I have.
Yeah, you've seen lactate. Yeah, that's what that is.
It's
it's you artificially taking that enzyme your body is not producing.
Yeah.
But you can take digestive enzymes for some people. Fun fact: a lot of people that go vegan, they're not used to producing the enzymes needed to break down cruciferous vegetables. If you haven't had a diet that's got a lot of legumes and broccolis and kales and stuff, you get hella farty, it's a known thing.
Yeah. When I started my basically all protein diet, if I didn't get my vegetable or my rice in, I would have trouble digesting just the meat without something like that.
The fiber
to help. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I learned real quick.
You will, because you'll notice things are a little different. Yeah. And that really goes back to, I'm sure you guys have had people on probably talking about your gut biome. Takes about 3 months for your gut biome to change. And so that's why any diet that you're trying, you need to give it a few months, because of course at first your body's gonna be like, what the hell is this? Because if you've never broken down those types of things, they won't have the enzymes. So you have to give your body time to actually ramp up and have that. But you can take digestive enzymes that go with some of these. I took one for a while that went with cruciferous vegetables because I kept getting a tummy ache because I was a new vegan and my body, I grew up eating chicken nuggets. I ate crap. So
Tyson nuggets.
Pretty much. Let's be honest. I was like their number one fan.
I had some Wendy's chicken nuggets the other day. They were incredible.
But did they've got the new Impossible Nuggets they're going to roll out at Burger King. There's a new Impossible Chicken sandwich because their Impossible Whopper sells really well. You should try that. It's really good.
Yeah, I try to avoid it, but
yeah.
I mean, if you're going to do it, though,
exactly. I appreciate the tip because that's big.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite products that you've come across in your time in this venture?
Interesting. So favorite ones for me, or just ones that like really just amp me up about
like the
world.
cracker you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like,
Ancient Provisions, by the way,
Yeah.
just like giving my friend Alex Strong a little promo. It's banana flour.
The book as well.
So no, he's just like
he's
just a friend of mine. Just randomly, I get sent. My house is like hilarious. Like I get sent so many food products on a weekly basis. There's just like a mystery package at my door every day because of what I do. I mean, I'm really pumped for lupini. I'm just gonna like throw that one out there.
What is that?
Oh, okay. I'm teaching you something. I'm very excited. Okay. Lupini beans they're like per calorie, basically like the highest plant protein in the world. It's a specific bean. It's eaten quite a bit in Portugal. People eat like they kind of look like a navy bean or like a Greek bean, like the, bigger flat, like white beans that you can eat. And lupini beans are now being used for like all kinds of different really cool stuff. I have like lupini bean ice cream in my freezer right now.
Oh, wow.
It's really dope. Yeah, you can get it. It's called Wicked Kitchen. They're experimenting with it for ice cream. So it's like super high protein.
Wow.
It has no flavor or anything.
No dairy.
Yeah.
When my brother, he eats super healthy and like he was a vegan for a while and then he kind of introduced meat back in, but he still is health conscious about all of it. The biggest thing was how do you get the amount of protein with consuming less carbohydrates, right? It's like if you want a bunch of protein but want to limit carbs. So something like that would be incredible because I feel like that would be the search is like the most amount of protein you can get in the smallest amount of, right?
Yeah, depending on what your goals are, right? The average American only needs like 50 grams of protein, maybe 45, right? But if you're like
working out a lot
you're working out and you have a fitness goal, you
yeah.
might need like 1 gram per body weight or pound of body weight or sometimes more, right? So if you're trying to go for macros, there's a ton of different products that are like specifically really, really macro friendly. Seitan, which is basically like vital wheat gluten based meat. And that's what if you've ever had like vegan Chinese food, they have really good mock like fake meats in them. They're usually Seitan. Seitan's really, really high amount of protein per, like my husband, like, he eats like a pack of Seitan a day, like literally.
Is he vegan?
Yeah. It was his idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, interestingly enough. So that's Seitan's really high in protein. These lupini beans, I'm really pumped for people to start trying them into products. So I have lupini pasta that Sprouts just started selling next to like Bonza. Because I only buy chickpea pasta because it's like a great all-in-one meal for me. I can just have pasta and veggies and it's like protein and carbs and veggies all in one.
Yeah.
Craig's has a good veggie spaghetti thing.
Yeah.
I forget, what is it? I used to get it all the time.
It's
but like
good.
that's the future is like a vegetable pasta so you don't have to eat the bread.
Exactly.
But it's healthy and you can still enjoy pasta.
Oh, exactly.
With protein
like
and
Bonza is so, I mean, I am like such a Bonza stan. Like they don't sponsor. I have so many brands that sponsor me. Bonza, I do not. I just literally talk about them because I love them so much all the time. But there's next to Bonza the other day, I saw there was lupini bean pasta and it's the same thing. It's like per serving is like 21 grams of protein, like really high amounts.
Wow.
And so there's these like really interesting beans people are starting to bring into. The thing is like there's thousands and thousands of plant proteins that exist out there. And we eat like 5, right? And that's another thing that is interesting. It's not a product, but it's a technology. A lot of people are using like artificial intelligence to create programs that can map and basically create databases that know what proteins are, and then they measure what the textures are, and they measure the tastes, and they measure, the boiling points and all these different aspects. And the machines can start to churn out ideas of what could actually turn into food products. And there's a number of companies that are doing it like that. It's really cool.
Wow. That's a whole different way to think about going about.
I have a chapter.
Food.
Yeah. I have a chapter on AI and how it can improve food quality specifically. Because it's like there's two ways you can make food. You can be a person in a kitchen being like, let's see. Or you can be a machine that can do thousands and thousands of recipe combinations in an instant.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, there's a chapter, Priyanka Srinivas, the Live Green Co. She's doing really cool work. She was born in like a slum in India with like straight up a hole in her roof.
Wow.
And is now like built like a Silicon Valley company that's like based in Boston, and they're using AI you'd find this really interesting actually.
Yeah.
So her background's at Target. She was like a Target like retail expert. And so she learned how people buy. And so she's replacing all of the crappy ingredients that are in food, not just like things that are animal products, but all the stuff with healthier combinations. That's what her entire like purpose of the company is.
Wow.
I have a bunch of her test products in my fridge right now of like new ice creams and things made with combinations of like super clean ingredients that nobody's tried.
Listen, if you ever need second opinions.
Dude, I was literally both of us at the same time. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just like, okay, there's
hungry?
a list somewhere like of all this healthy stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool how many different things are starting to converge when it comes to like the future of food. You know, a lot of some companies are actually providing plant-based protein to cut into meat products, even like just reducing some of the meat that's in a product, even like from.
So you get like a 60% meat, 40% plant. And it's just a steak.
Yeah. So
that's pretty incredible.
Secretly, they've been putting fillers in garbage meat all along. You know, there was a study a few years ago of Subway sandwiches, and this was in Canada where I'm from, and they went and they analyzed a bunch of samples of Subway chicken subs, and they found that they were only 47% meat.
No,
they were like half soy.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. They were. It was just soy. No, it was just soy. But what's so funny is it's like, I'm like, man, like if y'all just took the like small meat part out, I could have been eating these all along. It's like people are like, I could never eat soy, and I'm like, you're actually like eating it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like they use this technology to like lie and save money when it's like, no, we could actually be using it to like create.
Promote.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. So that's what's so funny is now we're talking, I have, lots of companies I work with that are like, we're going to cut our product in to create a high quality protein that can slowly reduce the meat part. And I'm like, cool. They've been secretly doing it the whole time, but if it sells, like great. So that's one approach that is very controversial. Some people don't really like that idea.
How do these companies not like get held accountable for selling you chicken?
That's not
chicken.
Yeah. Like you're false advertising something you put in your body.
Well,
what
they
if
say
there's
like,
a soy allergy?
That was the big whole. So they did it was like a national expose on the CBC, which is Canada's like, BBC essentially. It was a big deal. Like Subway had to issue a whole statement, and it was a whole thing. And like they say, if you look, it usually says like chicken product or something, like there's always like a fine print.
Yeah, but that's the problem with the words, right? And it's, you say one thing, it's natural chicken or whatever. It's like, what does that even mean?
It was born and it lived.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it was born and genetically modified, and now it's still
Super
barks
chicken.
and it looks like a chicken, kind of.
I mean that is actually like how they do it. They've genetically modified to have like these are the chickens that turn into chicken breast. They've modified the chickens so they grow super giant breasts now. Because Americans have such an affection for chicken breasts. Like that's if you look at the top 4 biggest selling meat products, the only one that's an unprocessed meat is chicken breast, natural chicken breast.
That's the only chicken I buy. That's chicken breast.
Yeah, so that is the only one on the list that's not processed even. And
that's good.
Yeah, but it also is so interesting, and this is something that I also kind of bring up a lot when I do these like panels and I travel all around talking about like how can we improve the future of food. We've done a really good job making burgers. Like everyone, and their mom is like eating a burger, but we really didn't do a great job of chicken, and we need to like really get up like Daring, and there's some newer ones they're making some really nice new products, but we kind of are behind the 8 ball when it comes to chicken because the majority of protein consumed in this country is chicken. And most of the vegan products that have existed so far are in the freezer aisle, but like 90% of chicken is bought in the refrigerated aisle, which is the chicken breast you're referring to. That's how most people buy chicken. So we still have a long way to go. And one of the hopes is that some of the companies that are here, actually based in California, can make cultivated chicken breast. So they could actually just start selling, cultivated versions.
As someone that eats a lot of meat, but also wants to make smart decisions about what I eat, what would just be your general advice for carnivores that want like to not only promote like sustainable businesses and all that, but like make healthy decisions?
Well, first off, You don't eat only meat. If you're eating plant-based products, you're a flexitarian or you're a, omnivore, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
You're already eating. It's like really, it's a matter of the lever, right? How far do you want to go in the plant versus like the animal piece of it, right? So, I mean, I didn't go vegan overnight myself. Even I think that, starting to at least pay attention to the meats that you're buying, a few things you can do. Stop buying processed meat. If you're going to buy meat, start to eat it the way that we used to actually eat. 100 years ago, we would get like a cut on like Sunday and it would be actual meat. You knew where it was from. And the rest of the week, you probably ate mostly like plant-based foods. If we could move more towards the way that we used to eat, we wouldn't have the problem of the planet being on fire. It's that we got accustomed to eating meat for every single meal, animal products in every single thing. So if you could start to consciously think about when I choose to have meat on my table and then default to plant-based when you don't, then we could really reshift like how much people actually consume meat. Because you just mindlessly assume that meat has to be in everything. But that's not how our ancestors ate. Like it's the exact opposite, right?
Yeah, the nuts and berries and the plants and everything. Yep.
For the majority, but if you get if you kill a deer, then it's like you eat it once a week or something, right? It's like
for like the winter. And it's so interesting. Like I actually have a very good friend that I grew up with that she like decided to move out east. Like we're from a small town, but it was still in Ontario near Toronto. She like moved out to like 100-person town out east. Like, I mean, she's on a different time zone. It's past Maine. It's like in a place called Newfoundland in Canada.
Oh yeah.
Like as far as you can go, right? It's where the Vikings showed up.
It's like Trailer Park Boys, my favorite show. They're like up there.
Are they Newfies?
I think so.
Maybe. So, I mean, she's in a town where I think the capital of Newfoundland is like 100,000 people. Okay. She has to drive like 4 hours to see a mall. And I love her. She's one of my oldest friends, but
4 hours to see a mall. So that's like, okay.
I mean,
okay, yeah.
And she straight up, like her husband hunts the moose and he hunts the rabbits. And like the majority of the food that they eat, like legitimately is that because there's so little food out on the rock over there because it's an island. And they have such bad food available. There's no fruits and vegetables. They straight up are like living like pioneers, like right now. It blows my mind. And I watch like what she's eating and I'm like, she says like, well, you never understand your vegan thing. And I'm like, dude, if most people like were eating a buck over the winter, like we wouldn't have the issues we're having. Like you're actually fine. I don't care at all. But just to like see what it actually looks like to more so live off the land, we do not do that. We have no idea.
Oh
like,
no.
We are not part of that at all.
No.
People are actually forgetting how to do that altogether. So
yeah, like it's in the summer they eat lobster, because he goes and catches the lobster on a boat and that's how they feed the family.
We do that in the Bahamas. It's amazing.
Yeah, but if that's like the way that we actually ate, we wouldn't have this problem. Again, if it's like you consciously are a part of what you are buying and you know what you are buying, you will do it a lot less because you'll know its impact. And like that's how we actually start to change. You need to actually think about what's on your plate. And most people don't think about what is on their plate.
You change your habit, right? Like it's changing the habit of which you eat.
Yeah. Or even just do like, I don't eat meat until dinner or something like that.
That's typically what I do.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good like starting point and a shift. And if we actually could get everyone to like be 10% more vegan, it's better to have everyone, be a bit more vegan than to have like 2% vegans, right? Like that's not really solving anything. And that's why cultivated meat is really exciting because in my opinion, cultivated meat's for everybody. Anyone can eat cultivated meat.
Right.
Literally anybody. The meat eaters can eat it. The vegans, the vegetarians, the keto, everyone can eat these alternative proteins. And we no longer have to live in this like binary of this or that.
Yeah. A friend of mine put it pretty well. He said, if you're in a room filled with, let's say 100 people and 50 of them say they're going to go vegan, the other 50 stay the same, don't do anything. Well, okay, now you got 50 vegans. What if then you come back and it's a different 100 people, but you somehow convince all of them the importance of, plant-based diets and eating and everything and how beneficial it is for you or whatever. And so everybody in that room turns not full vegan, but half of their diet now turns into that. You still have 50%.
Yeah.
And there's a majority of a better impact moving forward, I would say. So it's not that everyone needs to be vegan if it doesn't fit your lifestyle or whatever it may be, but it's a matter of implementing, like you're saying, these things that are beneficial to, ourselves, our bodies, our environment, everything across the board and the position we need to go in. Otherwise, what, 5 years goes by and we're all, where's the food,
Yeah.
And that's a very real thing. It's true. And I think that's why I'm excited about the future of food, because the binary of like, this is meat, this is vegan, like that's all going away. It's already going. I mean, precision fermentation. We mostly talked about cultivated meat. Precision fermentation, it's a fermentation process like beer or kombucha or wine. And instead of fermenting and creating like specific things like that, you can actually ferment and make it turn into an animal protein. And so this technology already exists. It's been around for a very long time, and it's actually for sale in the United States right now. You can buy products that are created with non-animal source whey protein or egg protein. So like you guys could go to Sprouts or Whole Foods or whatever it is like tonight, and you could go see Brave Robot. Have you seen Brave Robot ice cream?
Yeah.
So that is a precision fermentation product.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So so it's dairy. It is real whey protein.
It has a little robot actually on it, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because it like sits in between the regular ice cream and the vegan because it's neither. So this is a real product that is dairy ice cream, but the dairy did not come from a cow. The dairy was made through a fermentation process.
Wow.
So that technology is like another mind-blowing thing, because it's like, is that vegan? Like, would you call that vegan?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know you could ferment anything other than into alcohol. So
Right.
In the book.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that's precision fermentation actually represents a really, really unique investment opportunity and an entrepreneurship opportunity, because plant-based protein, it's amazing, and we have a lot of products. And then cultivated meat, it's got a lot of money that you need to spend. Precision fermentation kind of sits in the middle, where it has more of the scalability of plant-based protein, but it makes real animal protein. So it's isolated protein, so it'll be, whey, which obviously you know what whey is.
Yeah.
And you can actually buy like California, I think it's called like California Performance Co. It's that same company, just came out with their own whey protein powder line, but it is whey that's not from a cow. Again.
Yeah, I do like the whey isolate protein. Yeah.
Is it the same properties? Like it would be the exact like pound for pound, essentially. Obviously.
It's literally whey.
Wow.
It's the same thing.
I just love hearing about all these like alternative sources that are, more sustainable and just as healthier. And like, I love knowing there's like people like you out there that are pioneering these things and like getting our society closer to a point where we can actually, live functionally with it. But
yeah, I appreciate that. We have about 8 billion people on the planet, and we're going to have to figure out how to feed them. And currently 45% of the world's crops are turned into animal feed.
oh my God.
So almost, like when
all these stats are just like gut punches.
But that's when you start to uncover the way that the system operates, even from a mathematical perspective. You're like, wow, we use all this energy and land for this. Like, let's start figuring out other ways to do this.
Yeah. Well, I don't think people really factor in too that the stuff goes bad and not all of it moves on the shelf. So all of that production go into, to making it get to your shelf, and then it's not even used anyway. So there's so much waste involved.
Yeah, it's like a third of groceries or food is thrown out in the United States. And
it's crazy.
I mean, it's one thing when you have all of this footprint, but it's another thing when you have all this footprint and then something died too. It's not even eaten.
Right.
Like there's no world where you can ethically justify that being okay.
Yeah.
So
absolutely not.
But the future's bright.
Speaking of the future, how long until we can grow our own food that's not in the garden at home?
We got some peppers that just came out.
No, yeah.
Got some peppers.
Yeah, I mean, I got my lettuce grow going right now. I just
I love that. I have one of those.
Yeah. My husband just sent before I got here pictures of zucchinis we can eat tonight.
Oh,
like
they're
the
huge.
Zucchinis are fine. Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
And they have the zucchini flowers.
Yep.
Which I've never made zucchini flowers at home. I've had them at they make zucchini at Crossroads downtown in Hollywood, but I've never actually made them myself. So apparently like they're really, really great to make you toss them in corn flour and like saute them, I guess.
Amazing.
Ooh.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got like a whole thing after this where I'm going to like endeavor into my zucchini world. But, they do think that the technology, if we can scale it, of what I'm talking to you guys about the cultivated meat and things like that, we theoretically could make it like countertop at some point. and people might be able to have like Jetsons era, like an actual kind of like an air fryer looking machine that could just be like a small meat cultivator that could actually be in your own kitchen.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's something I would thoroughly enjoy, as you know, especially as we're, you know, as society getting more used to, you know, Uber Eats and, you know, people delivering groceries and doing all that stuff. It'd be nice just to have, I want to have a steak tonight. Let me get it prepped up and we'll be ready in 6 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what they think in like 50 years. That could actually be, you know, I know 50 years sounds like a long time, but I assume all of us will still be here because we're all eating properly. So there's a lot that we can do. And you think about, even thinking about like this week, they banned fuel cars in California. They no longer. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to buy a generator not that long ago, and Honda was the first one on board. So they completely, you cannot get a Honda generator in California.
Wait. Ban fuel cars?
You didn't hear about that? Okay, so
it's a 6-year process, right?
It's 13.
13?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
they're okay.
to
phasing
clarify,
it out.
they will no longer by 2035 or something like that. They're no longer going to have fuel powered cars like ICE cars being sold in the state of California, and it'll be fully EVs that are for sale.
So my house is 100% powered on solar panels.
That's dope. I'm trying to put them on my house right now. But
it was like that before I got it. So like credit to the people that had it before, but it was obviously like a big decision of like why I wanted to move.
Yeah, I just had them come out to check my house a few weeks ago, and it's so my pool is solar powered too.
Hell yeah.
So here's the thing. So my pool's solar powered right now, and my pool goes up to like 95. If I don't like, I have to actually set the dial to only go to 90 because I mean it's so hot here. The thing just cranks, and it started causing algae because the pool was getting so hot. My pool guy was like, ma'am, like your pool is like 95. And I'm like, it's great. And he's like, no, that's not sustainable for a pool.
Yeah.
So I have like half of my roof is being used for my pool solar, which you can do on your roof. So I have to take off one of my pool solars if I finish the rest of the solar for the house.
That makes sense.
So I'm like debating, I theoretically think I could leave one of the solar panels for the pool on, but I'm like, it defeats the purpose if I then start having gas that I put into my pool to warm it, right?
Right.
I think the trick with that, with a vehicle though, is that it does take a lot more energy to charge the vehicle versus the house consumption.
Yeah. So we actually factored that in because we just got the Mustang, which is, you know, it's about the same as like the Tesla SUV in terms of like the power it takes. And so we had to get it, like they quoted us for 120% of the power needs of the house to account for the car.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the cars definitely adds up, like that's for sure. And one of the things that's really interesting that Gavin Newsom was saying is that we have to figure out we pay a 55-cent tax at the pump right now. You guys know about the California gas tax?
I don't, but I don't doubt it.
I mean, you ever notice how?
In like
I just assume everything in California has a tax at this point.
So correct, that is correct. Yeah. So I was a lobbyist for many years, so I understand like tax policy. I fought taxes for a living.
Oh, wow.
So there's a 55-cent tax that goes on the pump, and that's why you'll see our gas looks more expensive. Like you go to Nevada, and you're like, what? Like just $1 cheaper. You know, you go to Florida, Texas, it's like even cheaper. So that's because they put that tax there. So they'll have to figure out if everybody doesn't use a pump anymore, where that tax will be derived from.
Oh, yeah.
So, now let's defend California for a second. You notice how there's no tolls here. So that tax is a large reason why we have no toll highways.
Well, think about how much taxes they're making off legalized marijuana. I mean, that's something that like never existed, that came out of nowhere and is now California's cash crop.
Yeah, but you've heard about like the downturn in the cannabis market because so many people think that the taxes are so high. There's so many people legally growing their own now.
Well,
and like sales have dropped, have they not?
It's still a crazy number that came out of nowhere. And like, yes, they have to lower the tax. I mean, it's an absurd number that will drive more people to do it illegally for sure. But like,
if the taxes,
they'll figure it out. They're
still
making
taxes are this high,
an absurd amount.
Why do we still have problems here?
God,
so that is a different podcast, Brock, because this is before getting into food, I was a lobbyist for like Google and Facebook and all of that, you know, and so I can tell you intimately how the state of California works, how the city of San Francisco works, how all of this works. And many of our problems are not related to money. They're related to the system that they're related to laws in place. They're related to really shitty rules that we have here. Like, it's system reform that we need more than anything.
So like the milk formula, it's outdated.
Dude, I could write a novel on like what's wrong with California. But at the same time, there's a lot right with it, and it's still the place where people come to like make their dreams come true. And I think
it is. I lived in California my whole life, and I didn't travel really until I was probably like 21, maybe 23. The rest of the world is beautiful. This state is something I've never seen anywhere else in the world. The weather, the national forest, the views, the water, the ocean. Like, there's nowhere else in the world that has this ecosystem, I think.
The people.
100%.
Yeah.
It's the people, because I spent a lot of the pandemic living in Florida, which is where like my other house is. And, Florida was great during the pandemic. It was like open, and, we were doing okay. The gym stayed open the whole time in
I'm jealous.
Florida.
I got really out of shape during that.
I am okay.
Oh, I did. I have proof.
I was running like stadiums at the university and stuff for a hot minute there. But it's interesting. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like Florida is also a very beautiful place. Beautiful beaches, the water's amazing, and all those things as well. And the taxes are much lower. It's much cheaper. You can get amazing houses, great weather.
Yep.
My older brother just moved to Florida.
But it's the people. It's the people.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like California, you come for the people.
Yeah.
And you can't get that. Maybe New York. New York has really like interesting people too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's you buy to get like you buy and you pay all these taxes and you do all of it and you deal with all the bureaucracy. It's also that you can have access to like the world's most interesting people that are doing shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're all doing shit. Every single one of us here are just doing crazy shit that you can't do like anywhere. You're not gonna do this in Kansas.
Well, yeah, it's the melting pot, right? But LA specifically, and San Francisco, but LA is just, even New York, I think, is fascinating. There's people doing massive stuff. They're moving all the time. But LA, to me, has this different energy of, it draws people from all over the world. You can have a slow pace if you want, or you can go as fast as you want as well. And I think people from all over the world come here, the big movers, the people that are first adapters, the people that are making changes, making big moves like you. And we come together, and it's like, well, I never would have thought, like the people I met at LA Tech Week alone, I never even knew I would be going to an event like that. And then next thing you know, we're here, we're having a conversation. It's amazing. We're being educated while also going to be making healthier choices in our lives as well. Somebody who's massive, me and Will as well, massive advocates for health. And then sharing that with as many people as we possibly can. But here, there's nowhere else in the world. Like, you can go to Saint-Tropez and Greece and stuff, and it's beautiful. But I'm not. Yeah, well, but I'm not having these conversations. No. You know what I mean? So we're not. And if you want to be somebody who's doing something, who's making a change and making your dreams come true, whatever it is, there's something here for you. Absolutely.
I totally agree. I think there's a really nice line that I'm going to totally butcher from like Arnold Schwarzenegger's memoir a few years back. And he said something like, California, for all of its faults that it has, it's the closest thing we have to heaven on earth.
Hell yeah.
Damn. Like,
I mean, that man's seen the world, so that's a great.
Yeah, the man grew up shitting in buckets.
Yeah. Well,
it's like when you come from nothing, and I think
he's lucky he had a bucket. No, I'm just kidding.
Seriously. That's everyone to read an interesting biography.
Oh,
His book is really good.
I love reading on Arnold because of his mindset, where he comes from.
Yeah, I love
he's
Arnold.
The man. Yeah.
He was like my childhood hero growing up, and I was part of like the Game Changers and all of that. Like, the most devastating thing that ever happened to me was he was hosting the Game Changers after party, which was the premiere he worked on. And I was at the premiere, and I flew down, and my friend, like, we had front row seats, and we did the red carpet. And like literally that night, they're like, Arnold has had a tragedy in the family. He can't come to the party. And I was like, no.
That's where we know Patrick.
I know Patrick too.
Yeah, Patrick's so awesome. I was telling him, I was like, "Yo, I just booked this movie. Your dad's in it." And he's like, "Oh, is it the one in Toronto?" And I'm like, "No, what's he doing in Toronto?"
Yeah, with Tom Arnold. He's doing like a new. It's a show.
I think so.
Think it's
a
movie. I think it's a TV show.
So I mean,
it's like a Netflix show. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. And so I told him, I was like, "No, it's not that one." And then I found out that he pulled out of our film. We were in a conversation. I was so fired up to work with the legend. Like my dreams are coming true. And then I was like, oh dang,
that was my dream too, because I worked with all these people that worked in his administration when he was governor because of my political background. And I like met all these people and I was like, what was it like to work for Arnold? And they were like, he was the best. Like they all like all these different people, because what was fun fact about Arnold. So obviously he was married to Maria Shriver, who's a Kennedy, the most famous Democrats of all time, but he was a Republican. When he built his administration, when he was governor, he brought half Democrats, half Republicans in.
That's cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so damn cool.
That's how it should be.
Exactly.
Yep. And that's how it is too. It's like there's points on either part that I think are extremely valid, and I think that people need to pay attention to, and it shouldn't be one way or the other.
I want to pick your brain for days and weeks and years. Like, it's so fucking fascinating. And like, I've always thought, like, where do we go with food? It's the biggest crisis, I think, in our country. How do we do sustainable meat? How do we make healthier meat? What do we do with the animals, the chemical? Like, so I'm very grateful to be able to talk to you about this and for you to come on. And like, it's honestly, I think, one of the most important things we're facing in this country. So thank you for all the work you're doing and for coming on. And like, not only was it fascinating, but I want to have more conversations and ask you more questions.
Yeah.
That's a sign of a good conversation, right?
Absolutely.
100%.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on. And I'm excited to read your book. I got to order one. And
no, that's yours.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I brought the marker. I'll sign it for
I was
you.
just going to say, you have to sign it before you leave.
Yeah, that's your gift. Of course. It's the least that I can do. But I mean, there's a lot more to come. Wait till we have the fund. And
yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that. There's going to be more conversations. And,
we're going to change the way that investing in the future of food goes as well. Like that's
so
the
cool.
next big thing, getting more and more money into it and making the money more effective.
Yeah.
That's how you make the change, right? Like, get the money in and where the money is, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sniffing up a lot of, I am fundraising like a crazy person, but we're getting a lot of open doors of people all over the world that are like, how can I invest in it? People that would have never been interested before.
Yeah.
So the future is bright.
And the future is food.
Yeah. The future of food is female.
The future of food is female. I didn't get to finish my sentence.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.
Thanks for tuning in to Studio 22.